I'm going to continue talking about script fragments today. I'm going to show that shared variables can be created manually, and that copy-paste can be used to make sure that the names of the variables in their containers are the same, and that the entire container can be copied and pasted. And I'll show that an example of reusing the home page fragment on another script path, which really demonstrates the value of script splitting. Alright, so I'm going back to my script here. And first I'm going to just show that I can create a variable manually. I'm going to call it, make a field reference, which is the entire page. I'm going to call it full Google home page. Create a variable. Alright, so there's the variables that are created by splitting a test. I want to make sure I'm using the same container name and variable names. That's very important. I don't think I was careful enough in this demo. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take that full page, I'm going to create a variable, and I'm going to assign that value to this variable so that another script fragment can consume it. I'm going to call this variable full page passed around. Note that by default it's only used by this script fragment, and you really want it to be all tests for this user. That will burn you at some point, so watch out for that. Every time you create a variable to share, you need to change that. Now, since this is the producer of it, if the producer of that variable, then if it's not initialized, then do nothing and don't initialize it for you, because you're going to put an assignment statement, variable assignment, and there's the full page passed around variable that I just created. And the data source of that is it'll give you a dialog that I can choose from. And it's smart enough usually to recognize that you just were mucking with that variable, so it's actually highlighted. So that does the assignment statement. So the shared variable full page passed around is initialized upon exiting this routine, or this script fragment. And yes, you can make it a rule, and that means if you apply this rule next time, this will be done for you automatically. I'm going to append to my existing rules. And every time you create a rule, it shows you the file so you can look more closely at it, make sure it's doing what you want it to. So now let me find, okay, this is the schedule. So I'm going to open up that Firefox Images script fragment. And I'm going to manually create a variable that's passed in here. And I'm going to make sure that I get the right name by doing a copy paste of this variable name. I could have actually copied the entire container, which would be a little bit easier. And now this back arrow is something that Eclipse provides you. If you press it enough times, you'll get back to where you were. It's sort of handy. I don't know why you have to click so many times, but it's a useful Eclipse tool. Alright, so I'm going to add a variable declaration. I'm going to paste the name of it around. That way I'm sure I got the same name. Once again, the default is for this test only. I want it for all tests for this user, so the variable shared. If it's not initialized, because this is the consumer, I want to treat this as a test log error. I want to treat this as an error if the variable is not input, not initialized upon input. And once again, I saved, so you could ask if you want to create a rule. I don't really need to create a rule for this right now. And then I could use that variable in here. So what I just showed is that shared variables can be created manually. You can just copy paste to make sure that the names are the same. And what I didn't show is that the entire container can be copied and pasted, and that's really the best thing to do. Alright, now I'm going to create another fragment here. It's just going to be the search fragment. So this test goes to the home page and then goes to search. But I don't want to have to rescript the home page. I want to reuse the home page fragment. So I'm going to create a new test fragment from the search part of this. I'll call it search only, put a description, and it tells me it's going to create new variables. I'm not so sure about these host variables being passed around. That bothers me a little bit, but since this is just a demo, I'm not going to worry about it. You usually need to pass host ports and names around. So anyway, so it's creating a fragment and it's passing variables around. The variable is created by split test, and once again I want to make sure that the names of the container is the same, although I'm not sure how important that is. But the names of these passed in variables really do need to match what's coming from the home page. So in this particular test, I see that there's a RPT created a value variable, but it's actually something called new window. And what I've shown there is you can use the variable usage to see where this value comes from. Watch this, value 2 is coming from that search, it's coming from that request, and it's actually the site variable. So instead of calling it value 2, I'm going to name it something that is more meaningful. It's really site. So usually I don't stick with RPT's assigned values. I try to make them more user-friendly, more meaningful. This is a source variable. And another thing is that if you change the name of a variable, all the usage of that variable is automatically changed for you. So that's sort of nice. And we can show that right here, because here is where that source value is used. And you can see from the pop-up there, it's from the variable called source, because I just renamed it source. Let's highlight all 3 of those. I'm going to copy the entire container, the elements of the container. I'm going to open up that home page fragment, open test, and I'll go to that container, that shared container, and I'm going to paste all those variables right in here. Alright, so you see that there they are. I'm going to change the error checking, because this is the producer, the home page is the producer of those values, and it's not an error if it's not initialized when you start. So you have to make sure that you do assign to it before you exit this fragment. Now I haven't done that yet. You got to make sure you do these assignment statements before you exit, because this fragment is producing those values for another fragment. So it needs to declare it, and then it needs to make sure it initializes it before exiting. Let me take us through the steps that I go through to make that substitution in the Google home page for those variables that I manually copied there. So what I've got is I've got the original script before it was split, and I'm looking at the search function, which is now its own separate function, and there is this new window variable. And I'm going to go to the where it comes from, and that is actually the Google home page. You can see there's new window value equals 1 and the whole variable name and everything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy that, because what I need to do is find that in the split version of the home page. So go to the Google homepage fragment, which is where I have the variable, but I have not done the assignment yet. And I'm going to do a search through the test. I'm going to search for that variable. Search for that variable through the script. And there I found it in the home page. And I'm going to go to that page. It should be displayed right here, but I don't see it, so I'm going to have to do a find. It's probably scrolled off to the right or left. Let me just see. So I'll just find it inside this page, and there it is. So there I have that variable, and now I have to create a a reference to that so that I can do an assignment. So I'm going to highlight the 1, which is the value. That's the value I'm actually going to have to create a reference for. And I give the variable a name. I give the reference a name. Then I'm going to edit the regular expression for that. Let's give it a fuller name. New window on default home page. Name is unique. And it does give me a specific occurrence, but the regular expression is value equals, and that's sort of vague, and it might not be true if you fetch another page. So I want to get the whole variable name and make that part of the regular expression. So I'm going to select that entire string that's before value equals, and I'm going to copy it and paste it right before that value. Now you verify that the regular expression still works, and this is saying it did not work, and then you have to figure out why it didn't work. And in this case, I can see that there's an extra space, so I'm going to delete the extra space, and now I'll verify it. And now that regular expression with a very specific new window equals value and the input type is hidden, it finds a specific occurrence. And it can do more substitutions for me, but I said not to. So now that I have a reference to it, I need to assign to the variable. So let's do the variable assignment. And there's my reference value, or that's my variable value. And I'm going to assign it from the new window on default home page reference that I created. I will select that. And now I have assigned the value to that new window value before I exited the Google home page. So I would have to do that with any other variables that I created, the source variable and the site variable and new window variable. So when you save, it says, do you want to make a rule for this? You can, and it will do it for you automatically the next time you apply the rules. And I'll say append to the existing rules, future use. And now I'm going to add another user group so that I can demonstrate that I can reuse that home page fragment. So I'm going to call this the search group. And I'll call the first group, I'm going to call it the images group because it's going to go to the images page after the Google home page. And when I create a group, first thing I have to do is add, not insert, a loop so that this test will just keep on iterating and iterating and iterating until the test is done, an infinite loop until all the users have done everything that they need to, and I go into that more later. So now I'm going to pick the 2 fragments. I'm going to actually just pick one here. I'm going to pick search, and I'm going to show you that you can copy paste that home page from one to the other, and it's in the wrong order, so you can just move it up because you want to go to the home page and then do search. So that shows that I went to the home page in both segments, and in one I'm going to the images link after that, and the other one I'm doing a search after. To summarize, shared variables can be created manually. You can use copy paste to make sure the names are the same. The entire container can be copied and pasted, or just the variables from the container. And then I also showed reusing the home page fragment in another path, and that saves me the cost of having to rescript the home page fragment. And you can do it with more than just home page fragments. I've got tests where I've got a home page fragment and a login fragment, and I reuse those, and then after I log in, I go to different paths. The script fragments have well-defined inputs and outputs. That's the key. It's like a subroutine. It's got inputs and outputs, and the script fragment's got inputs and outputs. And that allows you to insert or replace one fragment with another. And the key is, as long as the well-defined input-outputs contract is met, the fragments can be interchanged. And that saves a lot of time scripting and makes the scripts more modifiable.